Hello there, my name is Will and welcome along to another What's That Groove, where I teach you how to play different drum beats from some of the world's biggest artists. In today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the drums in the song In My Place by Coldplay. Yes, welcome along to another What's That Groove, where today I'm going to be teaching you how to play a drum beat that causes some drummers, sometimes, a bit of a problem. The groove comes from the song In My Place by Coldplay, and the drums were originally played by a drummer called Will Champion, and this is a specially requested drum lesson from my good friend Nick. If, like him, you have particular drum beats or particular songs you would like to see broken down and talk to you on my channel, please feel free to go ahead and write them in the comments below. And why not subscribe to the channel whilst you're there as well. But let's get into this one. Let's break it down bit by bit and take a look at where some drummers go wrong when they first learn to play this groove. Now, the hurdle that this groove presents is that you're playing a syncopated 16th note pattern with your right foot whilst your right hand plays straight 8th notes. But our ears find it quite easy to grasp the rhythm that's being played with your foot. So that dum, ga, dum, 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 ga. We hear that and think, I can play that between the bass drum and snare drum. I can also play straight 8ths on the hi-hat. Which makes us think, surely it'd be really easy just to put the two together. But your brain, unfortunately, has different ideas. And when you go to do this, it may have sounded a bit like this. And no matter how hard you try, your right hand seems to be glued and stuck to your right foot. If this has happened to you, do not worry. It's probably quite likely that if you're learning this groove for the first time, the majority of the grooves that you've been playing have been 8th note bass grooves, which means the bass drum is normally hitting at the same time as your right hand. And in this groove, we have the challenge of it landing in between our right hand. And that's really difficult for us to compute because as soon as we hit that hi-hat, we've taught our brain to be like, yeah, hi-hat, bass drum, best friends, let's go together. So we're going to break the beat down by initially learning the groove with just the first two bass drums. We'll worry about the other two in just a bit, but initially, all I want us to learn is how to play this. So there are two bass drums being played within that groove. The first one lands on the first beat of the bar, nice and easy with the right hand, nothing to worry about, lovely job. But the second bass drum is a little bit more tricky because it lands on the of 2. And this means that when you get there, what tends to happen is your right hand wants to go with it. And what we have to understand is that it lands perfectly in between two hi-hats. So it lands in between the and of 2 and 3, which is your 4th and 5th hi-hat. So what I'd like to do is first of all just zoom in onto that part of the groove. Just have a quick look at the and of 2 and 3. So you've got a hi-hat on the and of 2, then a bass drum on the at of 2, and then a hi-hat on 3. So you have this and a 3. Now, whilst that seems simple, you're going to want to practice that an awful lot, playing it over and over again, and then see if you can play the groove now with that bass drum in the same place without your right hand jogging. Another tip with this one, make sure that your bass drum is being played as a 16th note and not an 8th note. If your groove is sounding like this, you're not playing it quite right because the bass drum is being played as an 8th note there, not falling directly in between the 8th notes as a 16th note. So do make sure that the bass drum is in the right place. Your right hand should basically be consistently just up and down. Nice, solid timekeeping, and the bass just lands perfectly in between when you get to that out of 2. Once you've got it down, it's time to move on to step number 2. Now for a moment, I want to take the groove that we've just learned in step number 1 out of our heads and pop it on an imaginary shelf. We'll just move the plant pot out of the way, the books to the side, lovely white trim. We're going to leave the groove there. We're going to come back to it, be nice and safe there, but we're going to clear our heads whilst we just look at these 2 remaining bass drums. And that's because these 2 remaining bass drums present somewhat of a development of the technique we've already been learning in this lesson. You've got 2 bass drums that happen directly after one another. One of them lands in between the hi-hats, but one of them lands at the same time as the hi-hat. And this presents a bit of a new challenge. Now what we're going to do is the same approach that we had in step number 1. We're going to zoom in to that part of the groove and see what are we trying to achieve? What's the rhythm we're trying to get? So first of all, we're looking at 3E and, which we're going to play hi-hat, kick drum, and then both hi-hat and kick drum together. So 3E and. 3E and. Now, first of all, I think it's worth just trying just the E and part of the groove. So that's bass drum on its own and then a bass drum with the right hand. So do make sure that your hi-hat isn't going with both bass drums. It should only be on that second bass drum. If you find you can't help it and you're still having this problem that you have 2 in a row, try this as a technique. I call it the window wiper. What I want you to do is imagine there's an invisible hi-hat up here, and that is going to be for the first bass drum. The second one then lands with our actual hi-hat. So we kind of have like a E and, off, on, and you kind of get this weird window wiper thing going right and left. It looks silly, but it works. So you're going to go off, on, or E and. I know it looks a bit silly, but it's a great way of tricking your brain into thinking you're hitting something when you're not. And often I find that once my brain has been tricked, it kind of gets more on board with what I'm trying to get my body to do. Once you're happy with that, let's reintroduce our hi-hat that lands on 3. So now we're going to have 3E and. Hi-hat, bass drum, both together. Hat, kick, both. If you're happy with that, why not introduce the snare on 4 as well? So now we have 3E and 4. Hat, kick, both, snare. And to finish off the second half of the groove, let's put the and of 4 in there as well. So 3E and 4 and. That now gives me the whole second half of the drum beat. So what I'm going to do is see if I can just play a 1 and 2 and with bass and snare and with that second half of the beat. So as a whole bar, step 2 would sound like this. And if you're happy with how things are sounding, we can bring step 1 and step 2 together in step number 3. So in step 1 and step 2, you've now practiced both techniques and both halves of the groove. And it makes sense that now you can bring those 2 halves together and try and play the whole drum beat. And you can give it a go from the beginning to the end and see how you get on. It might work. If it does, fantastic job, so proud of you, well done, lovely work. However, if it hasn't quite worked out for you and it's still going a little bit wrong, I find a more effective way is to use the same approach that we did in step 1 and step 2 by zooming into the difficult part of the groove and breaking it down. So now our chunk in the middle of the groove is a little bit bigger, but it's a bit more manageable because we've learnt both techniques. So we're bringing both techniques together and we're going to see if we can play the and 3E and chunk of the groove. So we've got and 3E and, which means hat, kick, both. And 3E and. Hat, kick, both. sped up just a little bit. Once we're there, why not bring the snare drum in on 4? So, and 3, E, and 4. Hat, kick, both, snare. Put the hi-hat on the and 4 on the end. Now all you have to do is add the front of the groove on, so that's just the 1 and 2, bass and snare. Put that on and you've got the whole thing. Open up the hi-hats, speed it up a little bit, and you've got In My Place by Coldplay. My favourite thing about students learning to play this groove is that it teaches you a technique that turns up everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're playing pop music, rock music, hip hop, any genre, any circumstance, at some point you will have to use that bass drum pattern or one very, very similar to it. So it's really worthwhile making sure you have it down. Even if you don't like Coldplay, I would say that drum beat is still worth learning. And hopefully from watching this video, you've got a better idea of how to do it. If you have, please go ahead and press the like button on this video, and why not subscribe to the channel as well to see more video lessons just like this one. Let me know in the comments how you're finding the groove, how you're getting on, and if you have any requests at all for drum beats you'd like to see me break down, please leave them there as well. Until next time, my name is Will, and I will see you again soon.